In a small village in Bulandshahr, Uttar Pradesh, surrounded by the quiet hum of buffaloes and the smell of wet earth, a young girl's dream stretched far beyond the dusty roads she walked every day. Her name was Sudiksha Bhati, 18 years old, sharp-minded, determined, and unlike most girls around her, unstoppable. Sudiksha grew up in Chandpur, a place where opportunity came rarely and ambition was often a luxury. Her father, Sudiksha Bhati, ran a modest dairy business. Her mother managed the home. They didn't have much, but what they did have was belief that education could change everything. In a village where most girls dropped out after high school, Sudiksha didn't just stay, she excelled. Every exam, every challenge she topped with quiet brilliance. Teachers remembered her as the one who never accepted average. At 17, she achieved something few from her background ever had. A full scholarship to Babson College in Massachusetts, USA. One of the most prestigious entrepreneurship schools in the world. For her family, it was like winning the lottery. For her village, it was a miracle. Neighbors would stop her father on the way to the dairy and say, "Your daughter, she's in America? Our own Sudiksha." And he would smile, proud, modest, still trying to believe it himself. At Babson, she studied business and entrepreneurship, but what she really carried was hope. She wanted to come back to India and create opportunities for girls like her, those who were brilliant but invisible, ambitious but unheard. But in early 2020, her journey was cut short by something no one could control, the COVID-19 pandemic. Universities across the world shut down. Sudiksha packed her books, boarded a flight back home, and returned to the same village she had once left behind. Homecomings are supposed to be warm, joyous. But for Sudiksha, being back in Bulandshahr felt different. The streets she once knew so well felt smaller now, like they couldn't contain everything she had seen, everything she had become. Still, she smiled through it. She helped her siblings with schoolwork, taught English to younger cousins, and video-called her college friends across time zones. In photos, she looked radiant, full of plans, full of tomorrow. Then came August 10th, 2020. That morning, she dressed simply, a white kurta and blue jeans, hair tied back neatly. She was traveling with her uncle on a motorcycle, heading toward Oriya, about 70 kilometers away, to visit relatives. It was supposed to be a short, uneventful trip. They rode past fields of sugarcane and roadside tea stalls. The late morning sun shimmered over the asphalt. It was the kind of ordinary day that never hints at tragedy. Somewhere between Chandpur and Sikandarpur, the road stretched out, quiet, rural, and open. It was around 11 a.m., and that's the last time anyone saw Sudiksha Bhati alive. Before we continue, if you're drawn into stories like this, real lives, real injustice, and the truth that too often gets buried, take a second to subscribe to Trace of Evil. These are stories that deserve to be told, and your support helps keep them alive. Later, witnesses would recall two men on a Royal Enfield motorcycle appearing behind Sudiksha and her uncle. They were laughing, shouting, closing in. But that's later. For now, all we know is that by that afternoon, she didn't come home. When her family realized she hadn't arrived, panic set in. Calls went unanswered. The sun dipped behind the fields, and her mother's unease turned to dread. By evening, a relative reached the police station. There had been an accident near Chandpur. A girl, they said. A motorcycle. Dead on the spot. Her father rushed to the scene, heart pounding. What he found was every parent's nightmare. The white kurta was torn, her jeans covered in dust. Her head had struck the road so hard that life had vanished in an instant. Next to her body, a notebook, its pages fluttering in the hot wind, words smeared with blood. The police labeled it a road accident. They told the family she fell. These things happen. But her uncle kept repeating the same words. They were chasing us. They were teasing her. They came close, too close. No one wanted to listen. By nightfall, the story began spreading through WhatsApp groups and Facebook posts. A bright Indian student studying in America killed in a road accident back home. But those who knew her refused to believe that her story, a story that began with brilliance, could end with an accident. In the quiet of that night, her father sat outside their small home, staring into the darkness. She was supposed to go back to America, he said softly. Not like this. The morning after Sudiksha's death, the sun rose over Bulandshahr like any other day. But in the Bhati household, time had stopped. Outside, people gathered, neighbours, journalists, curious onlookers. Inside, silence. A silence so thick that even grief seemed to move quietly, afraid to break it. Her mother sat by the door, clutching Sudiksha's school photo, the one where she's smiling shyly in her Babson College sweatshirt. Her father hadn't spoken a word since returning from the accident site. His hands were covered in dust. He just kept saying the same thing over and over. She was going to change the world. By late morning, the local police arrived. Their tone was procedural, detached. They wrote things down without looking anyone in the eye. Road accident, they said. Motorcycle lost balance. Case closed. But the story didn't add up. Sudiksha's uncle Ajit Singh, who was riding the motorcycle that day, told a very different version. He said 2 men on a Royal Enfield had been following them for several kilometres. They were shouting, laughing, making comments. At one point, one of them leaned forward as if to grab or hit her. Moments later, the motorcycle swerved and Sudiksha hit the road, hard. They killed her, Ajit said. They were chasing her. But when he tried to file the statement, the officers brushed it aside. They said there was no proof. No CCTV, no eyewitnesses willing to confirm the chase. And just like that, the case became another statistic, another line in a dusty police file. That same evening, photos of Sudiksha began circulating online. Her story spread. A bright Indian girl on a full scholarship dies in a mysterious road accident. The outrage was immediate. Social media exploded with hashtags like Justice for Sudiksha and Bulandshahr shame. But with outrage came confusion. The local administration issued a statement calling the reports of Eve teasing, false and misleading. They said there was no evidence of harassment, that Sudiksha's uncle was exaggerating. It was a familiar pattern in India. When a woman dies, the system turns the spotlight not on the men who might be guilty, but on the story itself. Meanwhile, journalists began visiting Chandpur Road, where it all happened. They found a narrow stretch of broken asphalt cutting through open farmland. No streetlights, no cameras, no traffic police, just a dusty road between 2 small villages. At one point, a reporter from NDTV stood at the exact curve where Sudiksha fell. He said, "You can see how open this stretch is. If anyone chased them, there'd be nowhere to hide, and yet no one is talking." If you're drawn to true stories like this, stories where the truth hides behind silence and power, take a moment to subscribe to Trace of Evil. Every story we tell uncovers what others try to bury, and your one click helps us keep exposing them. Over the next few days, pressure mounted. News channels aired debates. Politicians made statements. The Bulandshahr district magistrate announced that a high-level inquiry would look into the case. But beneath the surface, fear lingered. Locals whispered that some of the men seen near Chandpur that day were from influential families. Others claimed they'd been told to stay quiet. A shop owner who worked near the accident site told reporters off-camera that he'd seen 2 bikes pass at high speed, followed by a crash. But when asked to testify, he disappeared. Every day brought new contradictions. One police report claimed there were no other vehicles on the road. Another suggested the uncle was distracted. A third hinted that Sudiksha might have been standing on the bike, a claim so absurd that even senior officers later denied it. It wasn't just carelessness, it felt like a cover-up. By mid-August, the case had reached the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister's office. A probe was ordered. But the same police officers who mishandled the first investigation were still leading the second. Then came the post-mortem report. It stated, death due to head injury resulting from a fall, no external marks of violence, no signs of sexual assault. For the Bhati family, that report wasn't closure, it was an insult. How can a fall from a slow-moving bike kill someone instantly? Her father asked. And if it was just a fall, why did they lie about the chase? The government doubled down. They claimed rumours were spreading and that Sudiksha's death was being politicised, but people weren't buying it. Across India, women's rights groups demanded answers. Students from Delhi to Mumbai shared her story online, holding photos of Sudiksha, smiling, hopeful, full of potential. The pressure worked, at least partly. Within a week, the case was transferred to a special investigation team. But the SIT's findings would raise even more questions than they answered. Because as it turned out, there were inconsistencies. Not just in the witness statements, but in the timeline itself. Who saw her last? How long after the chase did the crash occur? And why did no one stop to help her when it happened in broad daylight on an open road? The answers, it seemed, lay buried in silence. Back in Bulandshahr, Sudiksha's parents sat outside their home one night, looking at her framed photo on the wall. They can close files, her father said, but they can't erase the truth. Someone knows what happened to my daughter. That evening, police officials in Bulandshahr held a press conference. Their statement was short and stunning. No eve-teasing occurred. The rider of her motorcycle braked suddenly. She fell and died. That's all. No mention of the men. No mention of witnesses. Just a clean, bureaucratic conclusion. But her family refused to stay silent. Her father, Sudiksha Bhati, went on record saying, "There were 2 boys following her. They killed my daughter." The local administration pushed back immediately. Within 24 hours, their narrative shifted again. First, the boys fled the scene. Then, no such boys existed. Later, her uncle was riding rashly. Each version contradicted the last. Each statement chipped away at the truth. If you've been following the story so far, take a second to subscribe. It helps more people discover cases like this, stories that deserve to be heard, not forgotten. As the days passed, the contradictions deepened. Reporters who visited Chandpur said villagers remembered 2 men speeding away after the crash, but none dared to testify. Some said the police had warned them not to create trouble. Others simply refused to talk at all. By the end of that week, a local journalist named Anuj Kumar, who had been quietly collecting CCTV footage from nearby shops, discovered something alarming. 2 cameras that faced the road, cameras that might have caught the chase, had their footage erased. When he asked for explanations, the shop owners said police had already taken the hard drives for examination, but no such footage ever surfaced again. Meanwhile, television anchors debated whether eve-teasing, India's euphemism for street harassment, should even be blamed. Some called it an unfortunate accident. Others accused the family of exaggeration. But behind the noise was a simple fact. A young woman who had defied every odd, who had reached the gates of an American university from a farming village, was now gone, and nobody seemed interested in why. As outrage spread, political leaders began weighing in. A few visited the family, promising justice. One official from Lucknow stated, "The police will act once there's evidence of foul play." But when asked about deleted footage and missing eyewitnesses, he smiled for the cameras and walked away. Back in Babson College, halfway across the world, her friends watched helplessly. They remembered her laugh, her dreams of starting a social enterprise in India. Her dorm desk remained untouched, notebooks open, pen still resting mid-sentence on a page titled Leadership and Integrity. Her death, and the silence that followed, became more than a tragedy. It became a mirror reflecting something deeply unsettling. How quickly a young woman's life could be dismissed as an accident when the truth was inconvenient. By late August, media coverage began to fade. New stories replaced her name, but the inconsistencies remained. Witnesses silenced. CCTV footage gone. A police statement rewritten 3 times. A grieving father begging for answers no one wanted to give. And in the quiet of their home, her family still waited for a knock on the door. Someone, anyone, saying they found the men who chased her. That knock never came. They said it was an accident. But accidents don't chase you, mock you, and leave you bleeding on the road. By the last week of August 2020, the outrage had faded. News channels that once screamed justice for Sudiksha had moved on to political scandals, celebrity gossip, and COVID case counts. The television vans that once surrounded her home were gone. All that remained was silence. And a father sitting by the doorway, holding a framed photograph of his daughter, whispering the same question over and over. Why is nobody asking what really happened? The official line was clear. Sudiksha Bhati's death was a road accident. No harassment, no chase, no culprits, just a tragic fall. The same administration that once praised her as Uttar Pradesh's pride now seemed eager to erase her name from public memory. Her father tried again and again to meet officials, but every visit ended the same way: polite sympathy, empty promises, and a closed file. Her uncle, who had been riding the bike that day, was quietly blamed for rash driving. It was as if the system had decided that if no one looked too closely, the truth could stay buried under the dust of Chandpur Road. But outside the walls of power, the story refused to die completely. Across India, young women began sharing Sudiksha's photo on social media again, not as breaking news, but as a reminder of how fragile safety could be. They wrote lines like, "She made it to America, but not past Chandpur. If she wasn't safe, who is?" In Delhi, a group of college students gathered for a candlelight vigil near India Gate. Their placards glowed in the night, handwritten in anger and grief. "Justice delayed is justice denied. Stop calling murder an accident." For a few hours, her name trended again. Then, like most hashtags in India, it vanished. If you believe stories like this shouldn't disappear when the cameras leave, hit subscribe. Every case we tell keeps a forgotten victim's name alive, and that's how real justice begins. Back in Bulandshahr, her father continued lighting a single candle every evening at the roadside where she fell. He told anyone who would listen that he still saw her in his dreams, always smiling, always saying she had a flight to catch back to Boston. But the truth was cruel. Babson College had held her seat open for an entire semester, waiting, hoping she'd return. When the news finally reached them, her professors organized a small memorial on campus. A photograph of Sudiksha in her white kurta was placed beside a candle and a note that read, "Her journey inspired us all." No Indian official attended that memorial. No update was given on her case. The file stayed marked as closed. Yet what makes Sudiksha's story so haunting isn't only the injustice, it's the pattern. Because every few months, another headline emerges that feels eerily familiar. A woman harassed on a road. A girl followed home. A student assaulted, blamed, silenced. And almost always, the final explanation reads the same. She fell. It was an accident. In that silence, Sudiksha's death became more than a tragedy. It became a symbol of a nation still negotiating with its daughter's right to exist freely. She wasn't from privilege. She wasn't famous. She wasn't powerful. She was every bright, ordinary girl who dared to believe that education could change her life. And the system proved how easily that dream could be taken away. Her father once said to a reporter, his voice trembling but clear, "They killed my daughter. Not just the men who chased her, but everyone who let them go free." 2 years later, the family's hope for justice had withered into quiet endurance. No arrests were made. No witnesses came forward. The men on the Royal Enfield were never found. And yet, the road where she died remained busy, lined with trucks, motorbikes, and the occasional poster fading in the sun. It read simply, "In memory of Sudiksha Bhati, 2002 to 2020. The villagers say that every August, someone, usually her younger brother, comes to repaint the words to keep them from fading. He says it's what his sister would have wanted, to be remembered." As night falls, her father sits near the small shrine at home, a framed photo of Sudiksha beside her old notebooks. He lights a diya, its flame flickering against the photo of his daughter smiling in front of Babson College. When a nation forgets its brightest daughters, it doesn't just lose them, it loses its promise. If you've stayed with us till now, don't leave this story behind. Subscribe and share it. Because the more people who know Sudiksha's name, the harder it becomes for the world to ignore her truth.